Manchester United news. And thankfully, we're not talking about a manager staying or going. We're finally talking about some transfer activity, strategy, which really resolves around Ineos, but also Ten Hag as well. So we'll be talking about Harry Maguire staying. We'll be talking about Mason Greenwood going and an increase in clubs that want him. We'll be talking about Manchester United's 3 major priorities. We'll also be talking about some feedback from Jason Wilcox around the squad injury issues that have happened this season. Let's talk about that as well. I also got a very interesting stuff that came out yesterday around Man United's 5-point plan. Look, it's a news show. Not all the news will be news that you like or even believe is true. And that is our job. We are a community. We're allowed to analyze the news that's out there. Sometimes we bring you the news. Sometimes we react to the news as well. Also going to talk to you about this ongoing drama around Gary Lineker, the BBC and Alan Shearer and their treatment of Erik Ten Hag as well. But let's fly straight into it. And I want to just, I'm just going to read this out to you actually, because look, I wouldn't say that this is news that I would call A-star information by any means. I think that I do want to delve into Harry Maguire staying. I think it's certainly one that will get a poll up and running for very, very quickly. And I do want to talk about the developments around Mason Greenwood, 2 Premier League clubs, Borussia Dortmund. What does that mean for Jadon Sancho? But ultimately, Ten Hag's transfer upset. I don't think that this summer transfer window is necessarily going to go the way that we think. And that's not Ten Hag being upset. I think that's some of the activity that might be a bit of an upset to you in the sense that you might not have been expecting it. So we can talk our way through that as well. Let's fly into it though. So this is coming in from Neil Custis in The Sun. And basically this is Sir Jim Radcliffe, so Ineos's 5-point rule to change Manchester United. Now, I'm not saying this is true. I'm just reading it out there as a little bit of news. So point 1, age limit of, I feel like David Brent. Point 1, he put strengths. Number 1, age limit of 25 for new signings. Number 2, no Galacticos. Number 3, the style of play to be set by technical director Jason Wilcox. Number 4, manager to be asked what positions he wants to sign, not what player. Number 5, Ineos to send a list of 3 signings per position for managers to choose from. I've never heard such bollocks in all my life. I've never heard such nonsense in all my life. And I don't necessarily think, if I'm being completely honest, and look, we have to be honest. I know it gets people's back up here, but we're going to be honest about Shearer and Lineker in a few minutes. And as somebody that gets clipped up out of context all the time, it's part of the modern world. People want to, set their own story, put their own opinion out there. It's just part of the game. And I've played the game. So when I saw this last night and people were asking me about this 5-point rule, well, let's break it down. Age limit of 25 for new signings. So we're not trying to sign Rabiot, who's over 25. We're not trying to sign Tosin on a free, who's over 25. It's ridiculous. It's ageist. And there's just no way that Ineos or Sir Jim Radcliffe are going to say, oh, you're 25 in 3 months? Forget about it. We're not going to do it. What I think is happening is that there is a focus on buying younger players because that's a certainty, but we're not going to not buy anybody over 25. No Galacticos, well, we can't afford them anyway, and they wouldn't want to come. So I think you can cross that one off as bloody obvious. 3, style of play to be set by technical director Jason Wilcox. Not necessarily. I don't think Jason Wilcox will wake up one day and say, I want to play Tony Pulis ball, and we're doing it. And then the next day I wake up and say something else. I think this will just be a logical conversation around the club involving whoever the manager is. But yeah, look, the technical director's job is to technically direct, and technical direction will include style of football, of course. Manager to be asked what possession he wants to sign, not what player. Well, this is logical and should happen at any football club. I think the manager would have to have a bit of an input on that. Ineos to send a list of 3 signings per position for managers to choose from. Again, you're not taking your kids to the cinema. Do you want M&Ms? Do you want Opal Fruits, Starburst, or do you want a packet of Haribo? It's not going to work like that. It's not going to work like that. So I don't believe that that's how it's going to work at all, if I'm being honest. So yeah, I think that obviously I don't buy into that story. And I certainly don't think that the Sun would get an exclusive on all that anyway. But it's interesting. It's an interesting development. But I wanted to bring it in early because I just don't think it's relevant. And I don't think it's what Man United are going to do. I think there's guesswork in there. There's obvious work in there. But we're not going to make a 25-year-old cut-off. We're not going to say to Ten Hag or whoever the manager is, there's 3, take your pick. There'll be more involvement. There's no point in having Barada, Ashworth, Wilcox, Blanc, and then saying to the manager, which 3 centre-backs do you want? They'll have an input on it, 100%. Right, let's talk about some actual verified news. So the latest on Harry Maguire is quite interesting. Again, this is coming in from The Sun, so I'm not going to say it's the verified news, but what I would say about Harry Maguire is that there's been a change. Now, the story this morning is, and again, it's coming in from, I think it's Charlie Wyatt in The Sun, so again, I wouldn't put much weight on it, is that Harry Maguire wants to stay at Manchester United and that talks will take place very, very soon to establish what's going to happen with Harry Maguire. What we know as fans is that Harry Maguire last summer was up for sale. He had the captaincy taken off him and Erik Ten Hag wanted to move him on. Now, the reason Erik Ten Hag wanted to move Harry Maguire on, and I'm just going to set up a quick poll for you here, and I'll talk while I type. The reason he wanted to move Harry Maguire on was because his age profile and his style of play. And basically, like many people, the feeling around Manchester United was that Harry Maguire, whilst a very traditional, I don't think there's a more traditional centre-back in England, by the way, than Harry Maguire. He could play in the 80s next to Tony Adams. He's absolutely that sort of guy. But 31, Harry Maguire is just, and he'll be 32 next season. He ain't never going to get quick. He's never going to get quick, and he's never going to be able to turn like a Porsche going around a racetrack. He's more like a dustbin lorry, and that's it's criticism, but it's also acceptance. We can't start turning players into players they're not. But what Harry Maguire has been this season is reliable, good, and a team player for a manager that hasn't always had that. So the situation with Harry Maguire at the moment is that Harry Maguire is the sort of player that Ineos want to keep. We know that there's this, I don't want to use the word Brexit, I nearly did, and I did. There's this British ethos under Sir Jim Radcliffe that he wants to keep British players around Manchester United. And I think that Harry Maguire is going to be a player that fits into that. But it goes beyond that. And it might be a bit of an upset because I think a lot of you probably would say to sell Harry Maguire. But I think Erik Ten Hag's position on Maguire has changed a lot this season. And I think a lot of our positions around Harry Maguire have changed this season as well. The only thing I would say about Maguire is that there will be, because of the season he's had and because of the interest there was last year, there will certainly be a collection of British Premier League clubs that would like to buy him. And they'd like to buy him for probably about 25 million quid. I think it becomes a straight shoot up here because it's going to feed into what we're talking about of what's come out from the Telegraph this morning, that Man United's 3 priority positions are centre-back, CDM and striker. I'm just concerned that we might be wandering away for financial reasons from 2 centre-backs. We've always thought 2 centre-backs, and 2 centre-backs are certainly required. But financially, we're making people redundant. Financially, we can't afford Dan Ashworth. Financially, can we afford 2 centre-backs? And I just get the feeling that if we are moving away from 2 centre-backs, are we actually moving towards 1 centre-back and therefore you keep Harry Maguire? Now, I agree with Ken. I'd love to sell Maguire and bring Tomori in. I think Tomori at AC Milan is massively, massively underrated. He's had a fantastic few years in Milan, and I think there is a very good price you could get for him, and I think he should be in the England squad. But there's plenty of centre-backs out there. There's Todibo, there's Branthwaite, there's Scalvini, there's Guehi. There's so many centre-backs out there that would revolutionise our centre-back defensive pool. We've got Martinez, who, look, next season, fingers crossed, he's going to be available a lot. You're going to bring 1 centre-back in who hopefully will be relatively young. But then you're left with Johnny Evans, Harry Maguire and Victor Lindelof. And my concern is that if you keep Maguire, he can only be 3rd choice centre-back. And also, we've got to get serious here. And I think people in Ineos need to get serious as well. We don't have the depth in the defence that is required to play the style of football we want. When we talk about United and when we talk about the problems that we've had this season, even when Harry Maguire was fit, we struggled to get up and we struggled to play out from the back. So yeah, he's a good lad to have about, and he's been very good for us this season. But you still would go into next season going, if our defensive pool is Martinez, Todibo, Maguire and Lindelof, one injury to Martinez or Todibo and you're back where you were, playing a deeper line again, struggling with teams who can get in behind us. So ideally, I would have kept Varane and I would have sold Maguire and Lindelof, but we've got rid of Varane. So I think we're in a position where you go Lindelof or you go Maguire. Now, on the poll at the moment, 74% of you would sell Maguire. Maguire's 31, Lindelof is 29, but he will be 30 in July. So the difference between the two isn't that big. I think Harry Maguire will end up staying at Manchester United. That's my feeling. I think that Ten Hag has certainly been impressed by him this season. The fan base has been impressed with him this season. I know we've got Kambwala Heron, and he is another player that I would really consider being one to keep an eye on. I don't know whether we'll loan him or whether we'll actually use him. But Maguire wants to stay, apparently. And I think Manchester United, Ten Hag, I think would be more open to doing it. And I think it's 100% the sort of player that Ineos want to keep at Manchester United. So the thing with Maguire is if he goes, we know we've got to raise money. We're not Man City. We haven't got £200 million burning a hole in our pocket ready to spend. We've probably got 50 to 100 and we need to spend about 250. So you've got to raise money. And if you keep Maguire and you keep McTominay and you can't sell Sancho, you're suddenly really struggling to raise money. And I think that's a massive, massive problem, isn't it? You know, we really did. What's the background noise? Sorry, I've got a microphone on here and I'm not used to it. So I started messing around with something that you can probably hear. Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with Harry Maguire. Sorry about that. Maguire has shown his resilience and it's admirable. Thank you very much. Let's have a look at some of your comments. I want to talk about, well, let's bring, Maguire out, Greenwood in. This was a story I was going to bring into the show last night. But obviously, we got locked into all the stuff about Eric Ten Hag and the breaking news. So big show last night. Make sure you check it out for the latest of what's happening with Ten Hag. In relation to Mason Greenwood, a couple of stories coming out last night. I think it was from the Telegraph as well that Borussia Dortmund are interested in in Mason Greenwood. We've also had a story this morning that a couple of Premier League clubs are interested in Mason Greenwood. We know that Barcelona, Juventus and Atletico Madrid are all interested in Mason Greenwood as well. So, look, if you're keeping Harry Maguire, you're selling Mason Greenwood. There's actually no connection between that. Maguire is a centre-back and Mason Greenwood is a player that gives United a real profit boost. It's pure profit. And I know some of you want to give him a chance, but I'm tired of going over the same conversation here. We've got to raise money. If you keep Mason Greenwood, we're not signing anybody. Like we've got to sell players, and I don't know who you're going to sell. So I'm a bit confused by keep Maguire, keep McTominay, keep Rashford, keep Mount, keep Varane, keep Casemiro, keep Greenwood, keep playing the way we're playing there. But we can't keep everybody and buy everybody. So people need to wake up and realise that if we're going to move forward, we've got to get ruthless in the transfer window. And that means we've got to sell some players. And unfortunately, we don't get any money for Amrabat. We don't get any money for Varane. We don't get any money for Brandon Williams. We won't get any money for Van der Beek or Ericsson. So we've got to sell players that maybe some of you wouldn't normally think of selling. And Man United are 100% thinking about doing this with Mason Greenwood, and there is so much interest. I think the interesting thing with Mason Greenwood is that if Borussia Dortmund want Mason Greenwood, what does that do for us and Jadon Sancho? They play in the same bloody position, and Borussia Dortmund are not going to have 100 million to give us for Sancho and Greenwood. I just can't see that happening at all. So I do sort of think that this Dortmund story is quite interesting, but I don't really see anything in it, if I'm being honest. I don't really see how Manchester United or Dortmund would do a deal for Mason Greenwood and then what happens to Jadon Sancho, because I think Sancho's only chance of a move this summer is through Dortmund. So I don't see him going to Dortmund, but it's important to bring that in as a news story this morning, that there is interest apparently around him. I'll talk about that in the manager situation in a moment, but let me just bring you this in relation to Mason Greenwood. Dortmund have had some exploratory discussions with Manchester United about a potential loan deal for Mason Greenwood. United are open to another season loan, provided it came with an obligation to buy. I mean, I just think this story is complete bollocks. I'm sorry, I really do. It also goes on to say that at least 2 Premier League clubs have inquired about Mason Greenwood. But going back to what I just said there, we can't loan out Mason Greenwood. Like, we literally are going to have a nightmare summer if we loan out Mason Greenwood, because you either keep him or you sell him. If you loan him, we're biting our nose off here. We need the financial input now, or we need the player. We can't loan Mason Greenwood. It's a load of crap. That literally can't happen. United One says, how about we keep Mason Greenwood and not buy anyone for right wing? I think we do need to buy. I think there's a seagull fight going on. We do need to, let's go and watch it. I think we do need to, look, Mason Greenwood hasn't played for Man United for a very long time. I think there's a lot of people out there that think Mason Greenwood's going to come back and make us fight for the title. We need a right winger or a left winger of mass creativity. And if we don't have that, then we're going to struggle next season. Mason Greenwood, from what I've seen of him throughout his whole career, is not the sort of right winger that is totally focused on creativity. That's not what it's all about. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. That's a magpie fight. They're genuinely outside my window. 3 magpies, look them up, having a fight. It's not my fault you got kicked out of the Conference League because we won the FA Cup. Go and have a fight somewhere else. Out the town, out the town. So I don't. As much as I respect that some people want to bring Mason Greenwood back to Manchester United, I don't think that he's not destined. I'd say Pellistri is more of a creative than him. So always the British players who are desperate to stay at our club, even if their minutes are reduced. Ollie made this bunch have no career ambitions, says Julian. Momo says, hi Mark, how's your day going? Also, what are your top 5 priority players Ineos should sign? Well, we're going to talk about who apparently the top 3 priority are for Man United in a moment. John says, respect to Harry, but we can't let Varane go and keep Harry. We're just falling for the same mistakes, players with brief periods of good form, says John. I mean, there's an interesting point there, and it's a little bit niche, but you are intelligent people. Rafael Varane is the best centre-back that we've got. Rafael Varane played more games than Maguire and Lindelof last season. Rafael Varane is on 300 grand a week. Rafael Varane will be on 200 grand a week because of the reduction with Champions League. Harry Maguire's on 190 grand a week. There's really not a lot of difference between Manchester United's Harry Maguire and Rafael Varane in wage, age. In fact, Maguire's older, injury record, but there is inability. And I don't know that Harry Maguire, one thing I've noticed about Harry Maguire and Victor Lindelof is that they don't seem to be able to, look, I'm going to say this, I'm not going to say injury prone. Man United's physical output over the last 12 months has gone up a level on purpose. It's deliberate. Now, you will get uneducated journalists and fans who think that we should stop making them run hard because we're getting loads of injuries. This is not going to come from Sir David Brailsford. This is not going to come from Barada. They're actually going to insist that we work players harder or keep it the same, because we don't catch Man City by not running. And we certainly don't catch Man City and Arsenal by not running as much as they do. The reason we've had a lot of injuries this season is because a lot of the players can't deal with the workload. And I worry about the likes of Lindelof and Mount and Maguire and a few others, Luke Shaw, that they actually, as much as they're good players, they can't actually deal with what is required of them physically to be competing for the top 4, because Villa do it and Spurs do it as well. So it's not about injury records. It's about whether they can deal with this level of workload. Now, they will know that. And if I was one of those players and I was struggling, then I would be looking at a West Ham or an Everton, because they don't run as much as that anyway. So I think you've got to look at that, because yes, Varane's injury prone, but Maguire's had a lot of injuries and Lindelof's had a lot of injuries. So why is it we'll get people in the chat and we'll get, the specialists saying, well, Varane going's a good idea because he's injury prone. Maguire's had 2 or 3 injuries. Lindelof has had 2 or 3 injuries this year. And it mainly comes down to an inability to deal with the demands of a top 4 club. The demands of a top 4 club now are massive on your physical strength, conditioning, and you've got to play twice a week. So that's something that I expect Ineos to be absolutely on. So we can talk about Maguire's done well this season. We can talk about let's keep him as a 3rd or 4th choice centre-back. We can talk about all of that. But Ineos, and I would expect them to do this, also need to look at last season, we saw an increase in physical output and we saw some players fall away. If Maguire's one of those, you can't keep him, because even if he's 3rd or 4th choice, he's still training in the week. A lot of these injuries were being picked up in training from the intensity of that. It's interesting because there was a piece in The Athletic this morning talking about Jason Wilcox feeding back to Erik ten Hag that there's quite a few players under 21 who are playing a lot of minutes for Manchester United. And obviously, we know Mainu and Garnacho would be the 2 sort of poster boys of that. Ten Hag is fully aware of this, and Ineos are fully aware of this, and it's not ideal. There's no criticism. Like, it's not like Wilcox or Ineos are saying, why have you picked Kobe Mainu and Garnacho so much? They've played too many minutes. Everybody knows they've played too many minutes, but everybody knows why they've played too many minutes, because if we didn't pick Kobe Mainu, who else would you pick? If you don't pick Garnacho, who would you pick? So, but they are capable of doing it. They are capable of doing it. And Wilcox and co are aware of that. And this is a positive, because it's not as simple anymore as looking at a player and going, I like that player, let's keep that player. You have to look at their availability, because football has changed massively. And, the amount of times, I saw Man City play Real Madrid in the Champions League where it went to penalties. And then they played Chelsea at Wembley on the Saturday. 3-day break, 120 minutes. Phil Foden and Bernardo Silva played in both games and never stopped running. And I was like, that is the level of physical availability, but also conditioning you need. They were able to play 2 games in a row, but they were also able to perform for 2 games in a row. Now, I don't think we've got a lot of players that can do that. And that is the future for Manchester United, I'm afraid. So we've got to look at that. Sandeep says, will we ever get cooking with Goldbridge? No batter. So Sandeep, don't talk to me about the batter. Mark, with no CEO and director of football and reviewing Ten Hag, aren't the club wasting another summer? We should be selling, buying like our rivals rather than wasting time, says Anant. Sean says, better sell Maguire and Lindelof if we can. Both are good players, but not Man United level. Also, we need high-line centre-backs. These guys cannot do the job, says Sean. Look, I personally next season would have Martinez, Cambuala, 2 new centre-backs, and maybe Johnny Evans for another year. Do the dishes, honey, says Lifestyle Tube. Thank you very much. And the left winger from Napoli looked great last season. Kvaratskhelia, probably too much. Yeah, way too much. Way out of our price range, Chris. Let's be realistic, says Fuge. Okay, let's be realistic. Sell Greenwood for 40 million. Sell Sancho for 45 million. Shaw for 25, Maguire for 20, McTominay for 25, Casemiro for 15. You've got yourself 170 million. Yeah, there's players on there that we're not selling, that we're not going to sell Luke Shaw. Do you think Ineos do 1 centre-back in the summer and 1 centre-back in January, says Alex? Maybe. Jameen, welcome to the Members Club. Thank you very much. And Lee Willoughby says, it makes financial sense to sell Greenwood, then go for Elise, but do understand the right wing issue, says Lee. Greenwood for 40 to 50 for youth, financial fair play. Loan Cambuala to Nice could do wonders like it did for Saliba. Great point there by Carl Richards. And sell most of everybody over 25, says Gnome. There we go. Let's just pick up on this from James Ducker in the Telegraph as well, because it feeds quite nicely into what's going on at the moment. So in the Telegraph, they're saying that the priorities for Manchester United are a centre-back, a defensive midfielder, and a striker. And they're the 3 priority target areas for Manchester United this summer. Well, it's not breaking news. certainly it's not breaking news that we're looking for a centre-back, a midfielder and a striker. I suppose the profile of the player that we're looking for is interesting. It could be Branthwaite, Edison and Sesko. It could be Tony, Onana from Everton and Todibo. You know, you could build so many combinations here. And I think the important thing is that, and we've been talking about this and what's going on with regards to the manager situation, etc. But in the background, they have to be working on other things. This Maguire story is quite interesting because there's also apparently Maguire, if you're interested in the Euros, Maguire and Luke Shaw are desperately trying to get themselves fit for that, putting in the extra work to be fit for England. I mean, to be honest, it's not even relevant, is it? From a United point of view. I mean, I will be watching the Euros. So Chris says, I'm watching 15 minutes behind. Jason Wilcox is a good lad, but he's not somebody I trust with deciding on the style of play yet. It's interesting how people could be watching a little bit behind as well. Please do smash a like on the video. Don't forget to subscribe as well. Absolute legends. Loving the shows at the moment. But with regards to the transfers, I think I sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, would they be your three priority positions? Centre-back, centre defensive midfielder and striker. I'd just like to get a bit of opinion on that, because I think for me, if I'm being completely honest, I'm sort of leaning towards we will buy a striker. So is it a priority? Of course it is. It makes it naturally a priority. But listen to me on this one. We're not just going to buy three players. So for me, the three priority positions are two centre-backs and a holding midfielder. Because when I look at Man United's issues this season, yes, lack of creativity, yes, lack of service into the striker, but that's been a problem for 5 years. We've still won trophies and we've still qualified for the Champions League. Where I look at Man United's major problem this season, it's the fact that defensively we've been an absolute shambles because of injury, and Casemiro's fell off a cliff. So for me, if I could only buy three players for Man United, I know we need a striker, and I know we need a winger, and I know we need a left back, and I know we need a right back. But when I look at this season, the biggest issue I've seen is centre-back and holding midfield. And that's your spine. Right back's not your spine, right wing's not your spine, left back's not your spine. And we have scored goals even with one striker. So I would say that two centre-backs and a holding midfielder would be my priority. Of course, we're not going to just buy three players anyway. We're going to buy 5 or 6. But I 100% believe that we need to buy two centre-backs. I also sense from you that there is a bit of frustration around the fact that the Ten Hag saga rolls on. And I'll give you an update from Fabrizio on that in a moment. But I wanted to steer clear of that for a lot of the show and just talk about the transfers and stuff, because I think it's just it's high time we started, moving things on a bit. And I think that's one of the things I think people are a bit frustrated about, is that we do need to move things on as a football club, because it's nearly June. In 2 days' time, it's June. And it's then going to be the Euros in 2 weeks on Friday. And whilst things can be done, I don't want to terrify people, but Man United are going to be back in training in 4.5 weeks. 4.5 weeks. You could have Jadon Sancho, Donny van der Beek, Brandon Williams, whoever, walking into Carrington with their boot bag. And we don't want to see that. And it's nothing against those players, but the sign of a failed summer for Man United is always that first day back at Carrington, when there's no signings walking in and it's players you thought you were going to sell. And that is something that, if I was sending a message to Ineos on transfers, one big thing you could do, which is massive positive PR for you, is have 2 or 3 signings walking in on July the 1st, and don't have 3 or 4 players that we don't want here anymore walking in as well. So I think that is something that maybe is on people's mind. I don't really think that United will wait on announcing the manager before they're working on transfers. What we're hearing is that, well, look, Michael Olise is very advanced. Todibo is very advanced. Now, whether they push the buttons on them and when they push the buttons, we'll have to wait and see. Neither of them are playing in the Euros. So I'm not panicked. I'm curious. I think previous summers, we might be linked to a player that was going to play in the Euros and you'd go, God, this is never going to get sorted until the end of August. You might also concern yourself about what the transfer budget is. Fortunately, or by design, we've got a lot of players this season this summer transfer window that are not going to the Euros and have release clauses. So those deals can happen quite quickly. My only concern really is, when are we going to do it? And what is the budget behind it? And do we need to sell to buy? I agree with Brian. I think Ederson is an absolute must. I've heard that Liverpool might be looking at him as well now. We know Newcastle. But look, I think that it wouldn't surprise me if we waited selling and buying until Ten Hag's been announced, because it might be a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons to start throwing out players in and out before we've decided what's happening with the manager. It might be perceived as unprofessional. But I certainly think we're on the cusp of things starting to move quite quickly. Now, what's the latest on the manager? Well, we gave you the latest on the manager last night, a very, very in-depth update on what's going on with the manager last night. However, there was a bit of an update that came in from Fabrizio Romano. Many managers are waiting to see what's going to happen at Manchester United, as they're really attracted by the possibility of managing the club. At the moment, there is no front runner for the United job, but there are many candidates. I mean, it's just a weird statement. And then that was from yesterday, to be fair. But then Paul Hurst in the Times has said that Man United have identified Thomas Frank, Pochettino and Tuchel as the main contenders for the Man United position if they sack Erik ten Hag. Now, look, I'll stick with the update that we had last night, and you can watch that in the first few minutes of last night's show. If you missed it, that's the place to go. But I wouldn't be surprised if actually we're expecting Kieran McKenna to sign his new contract with Ipswich today. If that leaves Thomas Frank, Pochettino and Tuchel as the alternatives, they're going to lose the fan base if they go for one of those. Like, Kieran McKenna shouldn't have got the job, and he's not ready for the job, in my opinion. But at least he's a good coach, and at least he's got a bit of a Man United connection. But it would have been massively controversial. Thomas Frank would be met with the biggest thud you've heard in the UK and the worldwide ever, as jaws hit the floor. It would just be a mouth drop moment. It can't be Thomas Frank. Pochettino, as I've said before, and John says Poch is not the answer. He's failed at all his previous clubs. We've already been here, Sir Jim. And as a lifelong Man United fan, I do question this lifelong Man United fan, because I feel like a lot. I would just say this, right? If Sir Jim Radcliffe is a lifelong Man United fan, why are we having to tell him about mistakes of the past? And I think this is a great point. If Sir Jim Radcliffe is a lifelong Manchester United fan and he's the same as us, why do we have to keep telling him about mistakes from the past? Like, sacking a Dutch manager after an FA Cup win has been done before by the Glazers. Sacking a manager every 2 or 3 years and not following through on a project has been done before by the Glazers. How does he not know these things as a lifelong Man United fan? But also, Sir Jim, 2 years ago, it was Pochettino or Ten Hag. And 90% of the fan base wanted Ten Hag. Nothing's changed. Nothing has changed, Sir Jim. Like, Pochettino's reputation has not gone up in 2 years, it's gone down. And Ten Hag's has probably gone up a bit. So why are we even entertaining Pochettino as a possibility when we did it 2 years ago and nothing's changed? If anything, it's worse. Also, Sir Jim, if you are a lifelong Man United fan and you've got a Chelsea season ticket, why would you employ another sacked manager by Chelsea? So I'm struggling a little bit, and it could all be nonsense, of course, but it seems to me that Sir Jim Radcliffe, the lifelong Man United fan, doesn't seem to know a lot about our recent history, about failures when we've recruited ex-Chelsea managers, sacking Dutch coaches who've won an FA Cup, sacking managers who every 2 or 3 years when the project's not completed. And also the fact that we didn't want Poch 2 years ago, and so why would we want him now? Like, there's lessons from the past that they should be learning, but there seems to be some weird activity. As for Thomas Tuchel, I don't really know what to say about Thomas Tuchel, because I just don't get it. I mean, this is a guy that's basically desperate for a big job and has been snubbed by Barcelona, Chelsea, and everybody else. And if we go for him, it just looks like pure and utter desperation. I've just been brought to attention this. Jurgen Klopp on Jadon Sancho says, I cannot just buy into that his useless stuff, like other clubs did, by the way. Buying a player for 80 million and then sending him out on loan. It should be, look, Jurgen Klopp will be a loss to the Premier League, but we didn't buy him for 80 million. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did. Jurgen Klopp, if Jurgen Klopp has said that about Jadon Sancho, he's a hypocrite, because Jurgen Klopp went into Liverpool and got rid of expensive signings that he didn't buy. So, the trouble is, everybody's a hypocrite. Everybody is a hypocrite. So what Klopp's saying there about Sancho is irrelevant, because he went into Liverpool and got rid of expensive signings that he didn't want, that he didn't buy. And what Ten Hag decides to do with Jadon Sancho is what he decides to do with Jadon Sancho, isn't it? It's nothing more than that. I don't know whether we've got any mods in, but there's some right twats in here today. Let's just get rid of this one. I think they're just Ten Hag outers that are scared, to be honest. Thanks, Solid Blake. That was the one I was trying to get rid of. Alex says Klopp speaking facts. But Alex, you've just exposed yourself as a complete and utter prat. He's speaking hypocrisy. So he's saying that we shouldn't loan out Jadon Sancho because we spent £80 million on him. He did exactly that when he went to Liverpool and got rid of players that he didn't sign. If Ten Hag had bought Sancho and loaned him out, he makes a valid point. But Ten Hag didn't buy Sancho, and also Klopp did this when he went into Liverpool. So, look, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. Apparently, we've got. I'm just looking for a little bit of breaking news here that's coming in, and I'm just trying to get a bit of establishment on it. I'm sure it'll pop up in a moment. So, we've got a few minutes left. That's fine. Sky Sports News are saying that Manchester United are interested in signing Jared Brandtwaite. Oh, for fuck's sake. God. We're better than this. Don't bring that shit to my door. Do not bring that nonsense to my door. I mean, I'm sorry. Slow Sports News are saying that we're interested in signing Jared Brandtwaite. Where have you lot been? In a coma? Come on. We're better than this. We did a hotometer at the end of March. At the end of March, we did a hotometer. That hotometer was Elise, 7 out of 10, Brandtwaite and Todibo, 6 out of 10, Edison, 5 out of 10, Frimpong, I think, was 6 out of 10. Like, this is not breaking news that we're interested in signing Jared Brandtwaite. We've been interested in signing Jared Brandtwaite for months. Same with Elise. What are we going to get from Sky tomorrow? Man United are interested in signing Elise. We understand, we're not going to confirm it, but we understand Manchester United will be playing their games at Old Trafford next season, and wait for it. This is absolutely breaking news, hot sauce. The home kit will be red. We can't confirm it, but we understand the home kit will be red, and the shorts, yes, the shorts are white. They'll be wearing white shorts, sometimes black. Yeah, and they'll be playing in Manchester. I mean, come on. I'm taking the piss, obviously, but we can't waste valuable time that we all have talking about Brandtwaite being of interest to Man United because Sky Sports have just announced it. I mean, that's the definition of slow sports news. We've spoken about this for months. Brandtwaite's they've drawn me in now. Brandtwaite's a very difficult deal to do. He will get picked for the Euros. Everton will want a big price. And again, it will be an indication of what Ineos plans are, because imagine if they keep Maguire and buy Brandtwaite, and we don't buy Todibo, and we don't buy Scalvini. British thing, isn't it? So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Mark, you should pursue acting, says Shabazz. I'll keep Varane, I'll sell Maguire, Lindelof, and buy Hermosa and toss in for free and be hopeful about Brandtwaite deal, says Kiss. Hi, Mark. Great job. Could you explain FFP briefly? This is cost. You can't explain FFP briefly. Effectively, you can spend... God, I haven't done this for a while. Basically, FFP is your revenue. So if you generate £600 million in revenue, you could spend that on transfers. However, you can't spend the 600 because it deducts what you've spent on previous transfers, on wages, and other outgoings relating to transfers. So Man United might generate 600 million, but we might spend 650, in which case you're in big trouble. So it's the gap between revenue and what you spend. It's way more in depth than that because it's what you owe on other transfers, etc. But obviously, the more players you sell, that comes off your spend. So basically, you've got a high line of a revenue, and then you've got a rising tide of spend, which you can take down by selling or increasing revenue. So that's how you do it. But also, just because you do that doesn't mean you've got money in the bank. I mean, Spurs, for a few years, I think they could spend £200 million per summer, but they didn't have £200 million in the bank. It seems like cat and mouse game, says Joseph. Ten Hag must have put some demands that Ineos don't like and are there looking at other managers, as simple as that, says Joseph. It makes sense for Ineos to move on, Ten Hag, because we might not meet his expectations transfer-wise and have a lack of resources. Thomas Frank, says Carrie. Oh, God, I feel like blocking you, but I feel sympathetic. More like Slow Sports News, says Sebastian. Hi, Mark. Should we be worried for our future with Sir Jim if we're not able to play Europa League? I don't see that happening, Ricky. We covered that last night. Other than that, the problem still with this football club is that the owners have not got their heads screwed on and we're still broke, says Trey. I think some of the stuff that's coming out about the football club frustrates me a little bit because it feels like, yes, I understand new people have got to get time to, we spoke about the redundancy stuff last night, Connor. Very good show last night. Give it a watch. But we're moving on with new stuff. I know that new people need time to come in and, you know, figure out what's going on at the football club. I completely understand that. That's absolutely fine. And I know it sounds a little bit condescending at times when I say, well, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is meant to be a lifelong Manchester United fan. But the reason I say it is not to be vindictive or, sanctimonious. I'm doing it because we've been told he's a lifelong Man United fan. Well, most of you are lifelong Man United fans. I'm a lifelong Man United fan, and I know our history, and I know our recent history. And what's frustrating me a little bit at the moment is that I feel like I'm banging my head up against the brick wall, and I'm sure you do as well. Because when you get linked to Gareth Southgate, you're not a lifelong Man United fan. You're not, because we all know that Gareth Southgate's not a Man United fan. When you get linked to Pochettino, you know we did this conversation 2 years ago and we dismissed it. So why are we doing it again? When you're looking to bring in a sacked Chelsea manager, we know we've done this before. When we're looking to sack a manager who's on a project, we've done this before. So it's just frustrating a little bit at the moment how much stuff is coming out from the Ineos side that we already know the answer to, and we're confused as to why they are pursuing it. And it could be because Dan Ashworth's saying, I think Southgate's great. And Sir Jim's going, Dan Ashworth knows what he's on about. But he doesn't know what am I back now? Let me know. I think the battery's gone on it. So just let me know, or I'll plug another one in. Hello, 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 hello. You're back, yeah. The audio might change a little bit. I've been using one of those because it's a little bit better, but, well, is it better? Is this one better than that one? Let me know, because that one might actually be better than this one. But, there we go. It will go a little bit quieter because this one was very close. So I'll have to redo it with that. Unless this one might work. Live bridge. Oh, this one might work. No, I haven't. I've not been sold. I've not been sold. This is all. This is one work. Is this one working? Let me know. This one working? And is it better? This is what we do. We're live. Yeah, that one had ran out of battery, so I need to recharge that one. So we'll go with this one. I'm just going to hold it a bit like this. Not usually used to doing this, but we'll do that. So yeah, I think that what we were talking about, we're talking about Sir Jim, Ineos. Yeah, I think if they just keep Erik ten Hag, then it is a bit like a work conference call. I'll get behind the movement, but they are frustrating me a lot at the moment in relation to how they're doing things, because I think they could do it a lot better. And they seem to be making errors, which are fine when somebody new comes in. but I think that they could do a little bit better, in my opinion. So hopefully that will happen. I've got something I want to bring in, but I want to just sort of stick with some of your comments for a moment, and then we'll go into this. Sancho crossed the line when he asked Ten Hag which shampoo he uses, says Jason. How much do we get for the FA Cup and qualifying for Europe, says Chris? I think this is a really important question. Really important question from Chris. Can we get a bit of love for Chris? Can we hit 2,000 likes by smashing a like for Chris? I've not heard anybody talk about this, Chris. And this is going to segue lovely into what I want to talk about. Why is it that as fans, we report and educate and discuss better than what the mainstream do? You know, they're so bitter in the way that they report, but I don't want to turn that one off. I just want to clip it on. They're so bitter and obsessed with their rhetoric and their story that they don't bother to report on stuff that's actually really important. So Chris has just nailed something here. We're talking about transfers. We're talking about sales. We're talking about buying 2 centre-backs. Why is nobody talking like Chris about the extra revenue that Erik Ten Hag has brought in that we didn't have a week ago? Winning the FA Cup will be worth more than losing the FA Cup. Going into the Europa League will be worth more than not being in Europe at all. So within minutes of winning the FA Cup, he's being absolutely ripped apart by the BBC, which we'll talk about in a minute. But on top of that, we don't actually get the story about the tens of millions of pounds that are coming into the football club now because we won that game. Nobody has mentioned this. And yet, for the last few years under the Glazers, we never stopped talking about money. But because it doesn't form part of the agenda, it doesn't become part of the story. Winning that FA Cup final was amazing from the fact that we have a trophy. And in 10 years' time, when you look at 2024, you will see Man United FA Cup winners. And that's significant. The FA Cup is the best trophy in England beyond the Premier League. But he's also probably brought in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million pounds. I don't even know. I think being in the Europa League is got to be worth 30 to 40 million quid. Winning the FA Cup is probably worth 10. So he's probably brought, by winning that game, we've gone from 0 to 50 million quid potentially. No one's even mentioned it. And it's true. And I don't care if people don't mention it, but the point is, for us, it's very important because we want to buy players. We want to be in a position to, move forward. If we lose that FA Cup final, we're £50 million worse off. McAlvis says it's nowhere near that much. Do you want to get sat down? I'll do it now. Well, the losing finalist got €9 million for winning it. The losing finalist got €5 million, but that's just the final. That's just winning it. You've still got gate receipts. You've still got getting through each round. Mate, that'll be worth tens of millions of pounds. Tens of millions of pounds, absolutely. It won't be worth anywhere near as the Champions League, but you're talking tens of millions of pounds. Look, 50 million might be a bit over the top, but it will definitely be worth tens of millions of pounds to Manchester United being in Europe. 100%, absolutely 100%. And look, that brings me on to something else. I've seen clips of Alan Shearer and Gary Lineker on their podcast sort of reacting to basically quick story short. After the FA Cup final, Gary Lineker said to Ten Hag, do you feel you've been treated unfairly? He said, yes, I've had loads of injuries, numerous different centre-back partnerships. You can't play the way you want to play when you've got those injuries. And then basically the follow-up question within seconds was, yeah, but why can't you get any consistency? Why have you played so bad this season? Which is just incredibly crap journalism. But they followed it up on their podcast this week by trying to justify it by saying, well, I sort of stand by it. They haven't been very good this season. And I think this is the big problem, isn't it? That I get it all the time. Like, welcome to the real world, Gary and Alan. I just think it's arrogance because you've played the game, you think that your opinion should be polished and accepted. But that's not the modern world anymore. Whether it's politics, film review, football review, the world is a-changing. Everybody's got an opinion. And one of the things that, helps me is the fact that I've been doing this for 10 years. So when somebody takes me out of context or spreads a lie or a tweet or whatever, it doesn't bother me because I'm used to it. But I don't think this lot are used to it. So they're now going to spend time trying to justify what they did on Saturday. And what they should actually do is what I've done many times, say, I'm wrong. I got it wrong. But they won't do that. And Jay says, yeah, but it's the truth. But it's not the truth, Jay. It's not the truth because they didn't listen to the truth. They basically took a guy who just won an FA Cup final against the odds, asked him whether he'd been treated unfairly. He explained why he'd been treated unfairly, and then they ignored what he said and went down an alleyway of idiocy. And then they had Pep Guardiola on and kissed his arse, even though he's factually facing 115 charges, and they never mention it. So it's biased media. That's what it is. And it's bitterness, because I think the story they wanted to tell was that Man United are a mess. And Man United actually did a David against Goliath, and there was no respect for it. And Alan Shearer's point didn't make any sense, because all he spoke about was, where's your consistency? Why haven't you played like this all season? And this is the big frustration, because don't talk about things you don't know. I'm not going to walk into Gordon Ramsay's kitchen when he's cooking a steak and say, where's the ketchup? Come on. Yeah, that's done, surely. Like, he's an expert. And we're experts on football because we watch Man United. You're watching the United stand every day. You're watching Man United play. You're keeping your ear to the ground on everything that goes on. And I think that with regards to what they did on Saturday night, it was disgusting, but their ego won't let them apologise for it. And that's the sad thing. It's the arrogance to keep justifying what you said when the criticism you got, literally the comments were, he literally explained why he hasn't had the consistency this season. You completely ignored him and asked the question again in a different way. And the answer is, whether you want to accept it or not, the reason we didn't play for most of the season like we did in the FA Cup final was because we didn't have Martinez and Varane. It's as simple as that. Now, you can accept that or not. But if you don't accept that, what you're basically saying, Alan, is Man United should be able to play the way they did against Man City with Casemiro and Johnny Evans at centre-back. Absolutely not. It's idiocy. So some people just don't want an excuse for something they don't like. They don't. In life, some people will not be fair about something they don't like. I get it all the time. I'm sure you get it. If people don't like you, they will not be fair. And it just came across from Shearer and Lineker that they didn't like Ten Hag. And if they were wrong in that, then they should have come out and apologised. But that's the truth. It came out and everybody saw it. Man United fans are not. It came out that they had a vendetta and they didn't want to listen to anything that he said, even though what he was saying, and the listener heard it, was very clear, very concise, and a very good answer. They brushed aside and went, no, we're not going to listen to that. And that was the problem. And now they're in this position where they want to try and justify what they said, when really they should just say, we got that wrong. And maybe we should have gone on Pep Guardiola a little bit more because he's got 115 charges. And maybe I was bitter because I'm a Newcastle fan and we're not in Europe anymore. So I think that I think this is all very good. And it starts from Chris saying, how much money do we get from winning the FA Cup and being in the Europa League? Tens of millions of pounds, Chris. But nobody's even mentioned that. We'll get stories from the Manchester Evening News and other outlets saying players are leaking to me that they don't like Eric Ten Hag. But we won't get headline, winning the FA Cup has just secured Ineos tens of millions of pounds. I mean, surely we've not even heard that as a reason to keep Ten Hag. The fact that he's just given them an unexpected huge bonus. I mean, that probably would have been a reason to sack him. This would have been used as a reason to sack him. And I know it would have been there. If we'd have lost the FA Cup final, one of the reasons Ineos are looking to get rid of Ten Hag is the fact that he's cost them £50 million in lost revenue by not qualifying for Europe this season. But it's never brought in as a reason for keeping him, is it? If City are not found guilty of their charges and punished properly, it will be obvious that the integrity of the FA and that of the Premier League have been compromised, says Mojo. I'm a regular listening to the United Stand and I live in the US. Bravo to the platform, says David. It's an amazing platform. Thank you, everybody. Alicia has missed 18 games during the past 12 months due to a thigh injury. financial bites, it's certainly worth focusing on. You know, Ineos will be part of that. If you were Ten Hag, would you work for people that stabbed you in the back? It'll happen again at a drop of a hat, says Ollie. As a football manager, yes. Jose Mourinho said it many years ago, that you're not there to be friends with your owners. Your owners will sack you. They're always, I don't buy into that. Like, Erik Ten Hag can't not work at Man United because he might get stabbed in the back. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer got stabbed in the back. Mourinho got stabbed in the back. Ancelotti's had it numerous times. You, as a football manager, you're well recompensed if you get sacked. That's their job. That's their job. Slick Nick says, I'm kind of concerned for our summer, hearing that we've sold Fernandez, Alvaro, not Bruno. Unproven talent, but the kid should have been given a shot. Sancho crossed the line when he asked Ten Hag. I've done that one as well. Should we be worried for future with Sir Jim? Yeah, if we're not able to do that one as well. On Alvaro Fernandez, you have got Harry Amas coming through, played for I think it was the under-17s this week, England, fantastic left back. Long way to go for him. But as many people have said, and I've seen it myself, very similar to Luke Shaw at a very young and lower level. So Amas in the next 2 years should be coming through. So maybe that's what Ten Hag is looking at, and what the club are looking at is that, yes, Fernandez might be worth a go, but you can take £6 million for him of pure profit. And look, let me put it this way. Alvaro Fernandez will make us more than Donny van de Beek and Christian Eriksen. We won't get 6 million for Eriksen, and we won't get 6 million for Donny. So as much as Alvaro Fernandez going might be disappointing, it is pure profit for Manchester United. And there is a buyback clause, says JDT. Can we all just give Peter a shout out, our latest member? Thanks for joining. Get your badge in. If you want to support the channel and get your badge in, then join the members club. Absolute legends. Love that. Busy summer. Just on our poll that we've had running, would you keep Harry Maguire or would you sell Harry Maguire? 72% of you would sell Harry Maguire. 28% of you would keep Harry Maguire. I've got to say, that is a lot higher than I thought. And I don't think it's a reflection on Maguire himself, and I don't think he should be worried about that. I personally think we will keep him. I think it's the sort of player that Ineos want to keep around, and I think Ten Hag probably has been very impressed by his character this year. I want 2 centre-backs. If we've got to sell Harry Maguire to get 2 centre-backs, I'd sell him. But I wouldn't say he's necessarily my priority to sell as much as he was a year ago. The problem with keeping him is, though, and I must be honest here, we've got, and I think this is the big takeaway for this summer, got to stop thinking about I'd keep him or I'd sell him. You've got to start thinking about the biggest and most obvious hint we've had in the last 12 months. For all the badness of the injury crisis, it's taught us a massive lesson. We now know the players that can't deal with the workload required to try and catch Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, Villa. They run ridiculously. Their energy levels are massive. We've tried to take those players to that level this year, and some of them can't do it. Now, Maguire's been injured 3 or 4 times. Lindelof's been injured 3 or 4 times. Luke Shaw's been injured a couple of times. Can we build with these players long term as they approach their early 30s? Or are they just going to not be able to deal with these demands? You look at Garnacho, you look at Mainu, you look at Rasmus, you look at Delot, you look at Bruno, they can deal with it. We need to start recruiting players, not just on ability, but physical capability as well, and workload. Man City have got a squad full of it. Arsenal have got a squad full of it. Arsenal don't get injuries because they've got players who can deal with the workload. We've still got a lot of players that are legacy players of a brand of football that's not about running around a lot. Counter-attacking football, Mourinho, Ollie. We might need to sell these types of players because they're not going to be able to play the way we want to play at the intensity we want. And if you keep Victor Lindelof and he's injured for half of the season, we should have got rid of Victor Lindelof. Legends. Thanks everybody for watching. Make sure you subscribe, bottom right hand corner, smash a like on the video. We'll be back with you at 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock unless anything breaks in between. Let me just double check nothing else is coming out before I end the show, because that's always frustrating when I've missed it just before the end. Sky are saying that we're interested, 60 to 70 million pounds for Branthwaite. I mean, that's just repetition, completely and utterly. I'll retweet that. 21st of December, Usyk against Fury. That'd be nice. That'd be nice. This is a funny one. This is nothing to do with Man United. Exclusive interview with Steven Gerrard. Money is not the only reason I came to Saudi Arabia. Exclusive interview with cheating husband. Women was not the only reason I got caught in a lap dancing club. Leave it at that. Take care, everyone. Thanks for watching.